not tired of life. That may sound strange, especially if you have been carrying a heaviness you cannot explain. Maybe you wake up and feel the weight before your feet even touch the floor. Maybe nothing is technically wrong, but everything feels harder than it should. You answer messages, you go to work, you speak to people, you smile when the situation requires it. You do what has to be done. And from the outside, your life may look normal enough, but inside, something has been getting quiet. Not peaceful quiet, not the kind of quiet that comes after healing, a different kind. The kind that happens when a person has been pushing themselves down for too long. The kind that grows when you have spent years becoming acceptable instead of becoming honest. A lot of people say, "I'm tired of life," when what they really mean is, "I'm tired of the version of me I have to perform in order to survive it." There is a difference. Being tired of life is despair. Being tired of pretending is a signal. It is the mind and body finally refusing to continue a role that was never built for the real you. It is not weakness. It is not laziness. It is not you being dramatic. It is a form of inner protest. For years, you may have learned to translate your real feelings into something more acceptable. Anger became, "I'm fine." Sadness became, "I'm just tired." Disappointment became, "It's okay." Fear became overthinking. Loneliness became being busy. You learned how to make your pain presentable. You learned how to be hurt in a way that did not inconvenience anyone. And maybe, without noticing, you became very good at it. That is one of the hardest things about pretending. At first, you know you are doing it. You know when your smile is not real. You know when you are saying yes while something inside you is begging to say no. You know when you are laughing because silence would reveal too much. But after years of adapting, the mask stops feeling like a mask. It becomes your social face, your family face, your work face, your relationship face, your "I'm okay" face. Then one day, you look in the mirror and do not know which part is real anymore. You may still recognize your face. You may recognize your habits, your clothes, your room, your schedule. But the deeper recognition is missing. That quiet inner feeling of, "This is me." Instead, you feel like a person managing a life rather than living one. You are there, but not fully there. Present, but hidden. Functional, but far away. This is why rest does not always help. You can sleep 8 hours and still wake up drained if the life you return to requires you to abandon yourself again. You can take a weekend off and still feel heavy on Monday if rest only restores the body that has to go back into performance. You can take a vacation and still feel empty if the person on vacation is still not allowed to be honest. The exhaustion is not only physical, it is psychological. It is the fatigue of constant self-editing. Every time you hold back the truth because it might make someone uncomfortable, it costs energy. Every time you act like something does not bother you when it does, it costs energy. Every time you agree to a version of yourself that keeps the peace but betrays your inner reality, it costs energy. These costs are small in the moment, almost invisible, but over months and years, they become a debt, and eventually, the body comes to collect. That is when you begin to feel numb, or irritated by small things, or disconnected from people you used to enjoy. You may lose interest in things that once made you feel alive. You may scroll for hours, not because you care about what you are seeing, but because you do not want to feel the silence underneath. You may avoid thinking too deeply because when you do, something inside you starts whispering, "This is not who I am." That whisper can be frightening, because if you listen to it, something might have to change. And change does not only mean quitting a job or leaving a relationship or moving to a new place. Sometimes, the most frightening change is admitting the truth to yourself. Admitting that you are not happy with the role you have been playing. Admitting that the person everyone likes may not be the person who feels free. Admitting that approval has become a cage with comfortable walls. Many people never reach that honesty. They stay busy instead. They keep improving the mask. Better career, better appearance, better personality, better image. They learn to sound calm, intelligent, successful, grateful. They decorate the prison and call it maturity. But the soul knows the difference between peace and performance. You can fool people for a long time. You can even fool yourself for a while. But the parts of you that were silenced do not disappear. They wait. They show up in strange ways, in resentment, in anxiety, in sudden sadness, in a feeling of emptiness after achieving something you thought would finally make you proud. In that quiet disappointment when everyone says, "You should be happy," and you realize you still are not. This does not mean your life is wrong. It means some part of your life may have been built around survival instead of truth. And survival has its place. There are seasons where you cannot be fully expressive. There are environments where honesty is not safe. There are families, workplaces, communities, and relationships where being yourself carries a price. Sometimes pretending begins as protection. A child learns to be quiet because being honest causes conflict. A teenager learns to be impressive because being ordinary feels unsafe. An adult learns to be agreeable because rejection feels unbearable. So before you judge yourself, understand this. Your mask probably helped you survive something. Maybe it helped you survive criticism. Maybe it helped you avoid abandonment. Maybe it helped you fit in when you felt different. Maybe it helped you be loved by people who did not know how to love the whole of you. Maybe it helped you become strong enough to get through years where you had no other option. The mask was not stupid. It was intelligent. It was adaptive. It was your nervous system doing its best with what it had. But what protects you in one season can imprison you in another. A wall that once kept danger out can later keep life out. A smile that once kept you safe can later keep intimacy away. A personality built to be liked can slowly bury the person who wanted to be known. This is why healing often feels confusing. You are not just trying to feel better. You are trying to understand which parts of you are real, which parts were learned, and which parts were built out of fear. That work is not simple, but it is honest. And honesty is where real rest begins. Not the kind of rest that comes from doing nothing, the deeper kind. The relief of not having to translate yourself all the time. The relief of being in a room where you do not have to perform. The relief of answering a question truthfully. The relief of saying, "Actually, that hurt me." The relief of saying, "I don't want that." The relief of realizing that your real self may be quieter, sadder, softer, stranger, more serious, more sensitive, or more alive than the version you have been showing people. There is a kind of exhaustion that comes from living too far away from yourself. And there is a kind of healing that begins when you finally start walking back. For many people, the pretending starts so early that they do not remember choosing it. A child looks at the faces around them and learns what is welcome. In some homes, anger is not welcome. In others, sadness is too much. In some families, success is praised, but vulnerability is ignored. In others, being easy to deal with becomes the only way to receive affection. Children do not say, "I will now create a false self to maintain attachment and reduce emotional risk." They simply adapt. They become what the environment rewards. The funny one, the quiet one, the responsible one, the high achiever, the caretaker, the tough one, the one who never asks for help, the one who keeps everyone calm, the one who does not cause problems. At first, these roles can feel like love. People praise you for them. They say, "You're so mature, you're so strong, you're so easy, you never complain, you always understand." And because praise feels like safety, you keep going. You build an identity around being the person who needs less, feels less, asks less. But a child who is loved only for being convenient does not stop having needs. They simply learn to hide them. Years later, that child becomes an adult who feels guilty for wanting basic things: rest, attention, reassurance, space, tenderness, respect. They apologize for having limits. They over-explain simple boundaries. They feel selfish when they choose themselves. They confuse being loved with being useful. This is where pretending becomes more than a social habit. It becomes a survival identity. You might not think of yourself as someone who pretends. You may say, "I'm just responsible. I'm just realistic. I don't like drama. I'm not emotional. I can handle it." But sometimes these phrases are not personality traits. They are old defense mechanisms dressed as maturity. There is a difference between being calm because you are grounded and being calm because you learned your feelings were dangerous. There is a difference between being independent because you enjoy freedom and being independent because depending on people once hurt too much. There is a difference between forgiveness and self-abandonment. There is a difference between patience and fear of conflict. The nervous system remembers what the mind tries to minimize. You may tell yourself the past was not that bad. You may compare your story to people who had it worse. You may feel embarrassed for still being affected. But emotional injury is not measured only by obvious trauma. Sometimes it is measured by what you had to become in order to stay connected. Maybe no one screamed. Maybe no one left. Maybe nothing dramatic happened. But if you spent years sensing that the real you was too much, too sensitive, too needy, too quiet, too intense, too different, or too inconvenient, then part of you learned to disappear while still being physically present. That disappearance can follow you into adulthood. You go to dinner with people and feel alone because the version sitting at the table is not the whole you. You succeed at work and feel empty because the achievement belongs to the performing self, not the living self. You enter relationships and feel unseen because you are offering the most acceptable parts while hiding the most honest ones. You receive compliments and cannot absorb them because they are aimed at a character you created, not the person underneath. This is one reason compliments can sometimes feel strangely painful. Someone says, "You're so strong," and a quiet part of you wants to answer, "I didn't want to be, I had to be." Someone says, "You're always so positive," and inside you think, "Because no one knows what happens when I'm not." Someone says, "You have everything together," and the sentence lands like a misunderstanding. Being misread for a long time can feel like loneliness, even when people are kind. The problem is not always that others refuse to see you. Sometimes the problem is that you learn to hide so well that even safe people do not know where to look. This is not blame. It is compassion. Hiding was learned for a reason.
But at some point, if you want to be truly known, the hidden parts need a way back into the room. That return is not dramatic at first. It rarely begins with a grand confession. More often, it begins with small moments of truth. You admit that you are tired. You say no without writing a courtroom defense. You let your face be neutral instead of forcing cheerfulness. You stop laughing at something that hurts. You tell someone, "I don't know how I feel yet." You let silence exist without rushing to make everyone comfortable. You notice when you are performing and gently ask, "Who am I trying to be right now, and why?" That question can change everything. Because most pretending is automatic. You walk into a room and your nervous system chooses a role before your conscious mind catches up. Around certain people, you become smaller. Around others, more impressive. Around some, overly helpful. Around some, emotionally unavailable. Around some, cheerful. Around some, invisible. The body is always reading the room. It asks, what version of me is safest here? And then it becomes that version. This is why different people know different versions of you. And sometimes, none of those versions feel false exactly. They are all based on real pieces, but they are edited, cropped, controlled. They are you with the volume adjusted for survival. The question is not, which version is fake? The deeper question is, where do I feel most whole? Wholeness is different from popularity. It is different from admiration. You can be admired while feeling deeply unseen. You can be liked while feeling unknown. You can be surrounded while feeling emotionally homeless. Wholeness feels quieter. It feels like not bracing. It feels like your shoulders dropping without permission. It feels like not monitoring every word before it leaves your mouth. It feels like your inner and outer life are not enemies. That is what many people are starving for. Not attention, not applause, not another achievement. They are starving for congruence. The simple, rare relief of being the same person on the inside and outside. When people are out of alignment for too long, they often diagnose themselves incorrectly. They say, "I'm unmotivated, I'm broken, I'm lazy, I'm too sensitive, I can't commit, I ruin everything." But often, the problem is not character failure, it is inner division. One part of you is trying to keep life stable, another part is begging for truth. One part wants approval, another wants freedom. One part says, "Don't make trouble," another says, "I can't live like this forever." One part knows how to survive, another wants to live. You are not one simple voice. You are an inner family of needs, fears, loyalties, wounds, hopes, and old instructions. When those parts fight silently, the result often feels like fatigue. You wake up tired because you have been negotiating with yourself all night. You hesitate because every decision has invisible emotional consequences. You procrastinate because moving forward might threaten the identity that kept you safe. You feel stuck because part of you wants change, and part of you is terrified of what change will cost. This is not weakness, this is conflict. A good psychologist does not look at a stuck person and ask, "Why don't you just move?" A good psychologist asks, "What would moving mean? What would you lose? Who might be disappointed? What fear is protecting this stillness?" Because people do not cling to pain for no reason. They cling to what feels familiar. They cling to identities that once brought safety. They cling to relationships that confirm old beliefs, because the unknown can feel more dangerous than suffering. This is why you can know the truth and still not act on it.
Insight is not the same as safety. You may know you need boundaries, but your body remembers being punished for having them.
You may know you need rest, but your worth has been tied to productivity for years. You may know a relationship drains you, but being alone activates old abandonment wounds. You may know you want a different life, but choosing it may mean grieving the life you built to please everyone else. So, if you feel stuck, try not to insult yourself. Try to get curious. Ask what the pretending has been protecting. Ask what you learned would happen if you were fully honest. Ask whose voice you still hear when you consider choosing yourself. Ask what part of you is afraid that authenticity will lead to rejection, conflict, humiliation, or loss. These questions do not produce instant answers. Sometimes they produce sadness first, sometimes anger, sometimes grief. Grief is often the doorway, because when you stop pretending, you do not only feel freedom, you also feel what the mask has been covering. You feel the years you spent being acceptable instead of known. You feel the opportunities you avoided because you were afraid. You feel the relationships where you abandoned yourself to keep someone close. You feel the exhaustion of performing strength when you wanted comfort. This grief is not a sign that healing is going wrong. It is a sign that your real self is waking up. When numbness begins to thaw, feeling returns, and feeling is not always pleasant. A person who has been emotionally frozen for years may mistake returning sensitivity for becoming worse. They may say, "Why am I crying more now? Why am I angrier? Why do I feel so much?" Sometimes the answer is simple, because you are no longer using all your energy to not feel. Feeling is not the enemy. The enemy is being alone with feelings you do not understand. This is why many people distract themselves from silence. Silence removes the audience. It removes the role. It removes the pressure to be entertaining, useful, productive, or fine. In silence, the parts you ignored begin to speak. That can feel uncomfortable, but it can also be sacred. At night, when the world slows down, you may notice the truth more clearly. That is why late hours can feel both peaceful and painful. There is less noise to hide behind. The phone is quieter. The responsibilities pause. And suddenly you are left with yourself. If that self feels like a stranger, do not panic. A stranger can become familiar again. You do not find yourself through one dramatic revelation. You return through repeated acts of attention. You notice what drains you. You notice what softens you. You notice when your body tightens around certain people. You notice what you envy, because envy often points toward unlived desire. You notice what you criticize in others, because sometimes judgment protects an abandoned wish. You notice what makes time feel alive. You begin to collect evidence of the real you, not the ideal you, not the impressive you, not the healed you, the real one. The one who may be tired, the one who may still be scared, the one who may not know what comes next, the one who has been waiting beneath all those adaptations, not dead, only buried. One of the cruelest traps in modern life is that many people are rewarded for abandoning themselves. The person who never complains is called strong. The person who overworks is called dedicated. The person who ignores their own needs is called selfless. The person who hides pain behind humor is called fun. The person who says yes to everything is called reliable. The person who never expresses anger is called mature.
But not every socially rewarded behavior is psychologically healthy. Sometimes the world praises you for the very thing that is destroying you. You may be praised for being low maintenance, when in truth you are afraid to need anything. You may be praised for being independent, when in truth you do not trust anyone to stay. You may be praised for being productive, when in truth you are running from emptiness. You may be praised for being kind, when in truth you are terrified of disappointing people. This is why outside success can become confusing. You get the approval you were chasing, but it does not feel like freedom. It feels like a contract. People expect you to keep being the person they applauded, and you, afraid to lose the approval, keep repeating the performance. Eventually, admiration can become a cage. Not because people are evil, often they simply respond to the version of you they have been shown. If you always appear calm, they assume you do not need support. If you always fix things, they assume you enjoy carrying the weight. If you always say yes, they assume you are available. If you always smile, they assume you are fine. People are not mind readers. This is difficult to accept because a wounded part of you may wish someone would notice without being told. You may think, if they really loved me, they would see how tired I am. Sometimes that is true. Some people are careless. Some people prefer the useful version of you because it benefits them. But sometimes people do not see your exhaustion because you have spent years hiding it with skill. A mask that works too well becomes lonely. There is a painful paradox here. The more perfectly you perform being okay, the less likely you are to receive the care you secretly need. The more you hide disappointment, the less opportunity others have to repair. The more you tend not to have limits, the more people build expectations around your limitlessness. Then resentment grows. Resentment is often a sign that a boundary has been violated repeatedly, sometimes by others, sometimes by ourselves. It says, I keep giving something I have not truly agreed to give. It says, I keep acting like this is fine when it is not. It says, I keep betraying myself and calling it love. Do not rush to shame your resentment. Listen to it. Resentment is not always noble, but it is informative. It points to the place where the false self has been overworking. It reveals where generosity has become obligation. It shows where silence has become self-erasure. For example, you may resent people who ask too much of you, but underneath that resentment may be grief that you do not know how to say no. You may resent people who rest easily. Underneath that may be sadness that you believe you must earn rest. You may resent people who express themselves freely. Underneath that may be envy of the freedom you denied yourself. The feelings you judge may be carrying messages. This is why emotional healing requires more than positive thinking. Positive thinking often tries to replace uncomfortable feelings too quickly. It says, look on the bright side, be grateful, don't be negative. But a feeling does not disappear because it is inconvenient. It waits to be understood. Gratitude is beautiful when it is honest. It becomes harmful when used to silence pain. You can be grateful and still be tired. You can love people and still need distance. You can appreciate your life and still admit that parts of it are not aligned. You can understand why someone hurt you and still acknowledge that it hurt. Emotional maturity is not the absence of difficult feelings. It is the capacity to hold truth without immediately abandoning yourself. Many people confuse healing with becoming easier to deal with. But real healing may make you less convenient for a while. You may stop agreeing so quickly, You may need more space. You may become less willing to laugh off disrespect.
You may stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You may disappoint those who benefited from your lack of boundaries. You may seem colder to people who knew you only as endlessly available. This does not mean you are becoming selfish. It may mean you are becoming real. Of course, authenticity should not become an excuse for cruelty. Being yourself does not mean unloading every feeling on everyone. It does not mean refusing responsibility. It does not mean calling impulsiveness honesty. The goal is not to become reckless. The goal is to become integrated. Integrated means your outer choices begin to respect your inner truth. You do not have to say everything, but you stop lying to yourself. You do not have to reveal every wound, but you stop pretending the wound is not there. You do not have to change your life overnight, but you stop calling the cage a home if it is not a home. This level of honesty can feel threatening because it may disturb the identity you have built. If you have been the strong one, admitting exhaustion may feel like failure. If you have been the successful one, admitting emptiness may feel like betrayal. If you have been the kind one, admitting anger may feel dangerous. If you have been the independent one, admitting loneliness may feel humiliating. But the parts of you that do not fit your image are not enemies. They are exiled citizens of your own inner world. Anger may be the part that remembers your dignity. Sadness may be the part that remembers what mattered. Fear may be the part trying to keep you alive. Longing may be the part pointing toward what you still want. Exhaustion may be the part asking you to stop living against yourself. When you treat these parts only as problems to eliminate, you stay divided. When you begin to listen, you may discover that each part has been trying in its own limited way to protect something valuable. This is where self-compassion becomes more than a soft phrase. Self-compassion is not telling yourself everything is fine. It is the courage to stand near your own pain without contempt. It is saying, "Of course I feel this. Something in me has been carrying too much." It is saying, "I understand why I became this way, and I do not want to keep living from fear." The point is not to hate the mask. The point is to thank it for protecting you, then slowly stop letting it run your life. There is a moment many people reach where they realize they have become experts at being acceptable and beginners at being alive. They know how to behave in a meeting. They know how to sound polite in a text. They know how to keep conversations light. They know how to avoid conflict. They know how to keep moving. But they do not know what they want when no one is watching. They do not know what they feel until it becomes unbearable. They do not know how to rest without guilt. They do not know how to receive love without earning it. This is not a personal failure. It is a training history. If you have practiced self-abandonment for 20 years, authenticity will not feel natural on the first day. It may feel awkward, rude, unsafe, or strange. Saying no may make your heart race. Asking for help may feel embarrassing. Resting may make you anxious. Telling the truth may feel like you are doing something wrong. That does not mean it is wrong. It means your nervous system is learning a new language. The first language was survival. The new language is self-respect. Self-respect is not arrogance. It is not believing you are better than others. It is recognizing that your inner life matters too. Your limits matter. Your preferences matter. Your quiet discomfort matters. Your dreams matter, even if they do not impress anyone. Your pain matters, even if you can explain why it happened. Your body matters,
even if your mind can push it further. When people lack self-respect, they often do not feel it as hatred for themselves. They feel it as confusion. They cannot tell whether they are being too sensitive or whether someone crossed a line. They cannot tell whether they are tired or lazy. They cannot tell whether they want something or only want approval for wanting it. They cannot tell whether they are being kind or abandoning themselves. Pretending blurs inner perception. If you ignore yourself long enough, your signals become faint. Hunger becomes inconvenience. Fatigue becomes weakness. Sadness becomes irritation. Discomfort becomes overthinking. Desire becomes embarrassment. You stop trusting your own experience. One of the first tasks in returning to yourself is rebuilding trust in your inner signals. Start small. Notice the body before the story. Tight chest, heavy stomach, clenched jaw,
Shallow breathing, relaxed shoulders, warmth, openness, dread, relief. These signals often arrive before the mind creates explanations. Your body may know the truth before your pride is ready to admit it. When you think about a person and your body tightens, get curious. When you imagine canceling a plan and feel immediate relief, get curious. When you achieve something and feel strangely empty, get curious. When you keep procrastinating on something you claim to want, get curious. Not judgment, curiosity. Curiosity opens doors that shame keeps locked. Shame says, "What is wrong with me?" Curiosity says, "What happened here?" Shame says, "I should be over this." Curiosity says, "What part of me is still carrying it?" Shame says, "I am weak." Curiosity says, "What strength did I have to develop too early?" This shift matters because people rarely heal by attacking themselves. You may force behavior through self-criticism, but you will not build freedom that way. You can shame yourself into working harder, smiling more, pleasing better, staying longer. But shame does not create wholeness. It only trains the false self to become more efficient. Many people who appear disciplined are actually terrified. They are not moving from love of life. They are running from inner worthlessness. They cannot stop because stopping would expose the emptiness they have been outrunning. They call it ambition, but it feels like panic in expensive clothing. There is healthy ambition, of course. There is joy in building, learning, creating, becoming more capable. But ambition that requires you to hate yourself in order to move is not freedom. It is a decorated form of fear. Ask yourself, if no one could see the result, would I still want this? If no one praised me for being this person, would I still choose this life? If my worth were not in question, what would I stop doing? What would I start doing? Who would I disappoint? Who would I become? These questions can feel uncomfortable because they challenge the performance economy of your life. So much of modern identity is built around being seen, rated, compared, improved, optimized. Even healing can become another performance. You can try to become the most emotionally intelligent person in the room, the most calm, the most secure, the most evolved. But if the goal is still to be admired, the mask simply becomes spiritual. Real healing is more private than that. It happens when you choose honesty, even when it does not make you look impressive. It happens when you admit jealousy without turning it into a personality. It happens when you apologize without collapsing into self-hatred. It happens when you ask for what you need without dressing it up as a joke. It happens when you stop using self-awareness as a way to avoid actual change. Because understanding your patterns is only the beginning. At some point, the question becomes, how will I live differently now that I understand? This does not mean you must become fearless. Fear may come with you. The goal is not to wait until you feel completely confident. The goal is to take small, truthful actions while fear is present. Confidence is often built after the action, not before. A person who has pretended for years may need to practice tiny acts of authenticity, saying, "I'd rather stay home tonight," saying, "I need a little time to think," saying, "That didn't sit right with me," saying, "I don't have the energy for that," saying, "I miss you," saying, "I was hurt," saying, "I don't know," saying, "This matters to me." These are not small if you were taught to disappear. Every honest sentence is a thread pulling you back to yourself. One of the most common reasons people continue pretending is the fear of being disliked. This fear can be powerful. It does not always feel like a thought. It can feel like danger in the body, a racing heart, a need to fix the mood immediately, a compulsion to explain, a fear that one moment of honesty will cause someone to leave forever. For some people, being disliked feels almost life-threatening because early attachment taught them that approval was survival. If love felt conditional, disagreement can feel like abandonment. If emotional safety depended on pleasing others, authenticity can feel reckless. So, when someone says, "Just be yourself," it may sound simple, but for many people it touches a deep wound. Be yourself could mean risk losing the role that kept you loved. Be yourself could mean discovering who only valued your compliance. Be yourself could mean facing conflict you have avoided for years. Be yourself could mean grieving the fantasy that you can be fully honest and still be approved by everyone. You cannot. No one can. A life built around universal approval is a life built around endless performance. There is no final version of you that everyone will understand, respect, desire, agree with, and celebrate. You can become kinder, wiser, more grounded, more compassionate, and still be disliked by someone. You can do the right thing and still disappoint people. You can be honest and still be misunderstood. The question is not how to avoid all disapproval. The question is whose disapproval you are willing to survive in order to keep your self-respect. This is a difficult question, but adulthood requires it. If you cannot tolerate anyone being disappointed in you, then other people's moods become your prison guards. You will organize your life around keeping everyone comfortable. You will become skilled at emotional weather management. You will monitor faces, tones, pauses, replies. You will call it empathy, but much of it will be anxiety. Empathy cares about others. Anxiety tries to control others so you can feel safe. There is a difference. Empathy says, your feelings matter. Anxiety says, your feelings are my responsibility. Empathy allows connection. Anxiety creates performance. Empathy can stay present during disagreement. Anxiety panics and tries to erase disagreement before it becomes visible. If you grew up around unpredictable emotions, you may have become a professional mood reader. You sense tension before anyone speaks. You notice slight changes in tone. You know when someone is upset, even if they deny it. This sensitivity may have helped you survive, but in adulthood, it can exhaust you. You enter every room already working. You are not just participating in conversations, you are scamming, adjusting, preventing, predicting, managing. No wonder you feel tired after social interaction. You are not simply socializing, you are performing emotional labor no one asked for and no one sees. Part of healing is letting other adults have their own emotions. Someone can be disappointed and you can remain kind. Someone can misunderstand you
and you can remain steady. Someone can be upset, and it does not automatically mean you did something wrong. Someone can need something from you, and you can still have limits. This is not coldness, it is differentiation. Differentiation means you can stay connected without becoming consumed. You can care without collapsing. You can love without disappearing. You can hear another person's feelings without immediately sacrificing your own truth to make them feel better. Many sensitive people need this lesson desperately, because sensitivity without boundaries becomes suffering. You feel everything. You absorb moods. You anticipate needs. You forgive quickly. You try to understand everyone's wounds. And slowly, your compassion becomes a place where other people's behavior goes unchallenged. Understanding why someone hurt you does not mean you must keep giving them access to you. This is one of the hardest truths for people who over-empathize. You may understand their trauma. You may see their fear. You may know they are not evil, but you are still allowed to protect your peace. Compassion does not require self-erasure. Forgiveness does not require availability. Love does not require endless access. Pretending often continues because we confuse boundaries with punishment. A boundary is not revenge. It is not cruelty. It is not a dramatic announcement that someone is bad. A boundary is simply information about what you can participate in without betraying yourself. I can't talk when we're yelling. I need advance notice. I'm not available for that. I care about you, but I cannot be your only support. I'm not comfortable with that. I need time alone. These sentences are not attacks. They are doors with handles. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries may call your boundaries selfish. That does not make them selfish, but it may make them revealing. When you stop pretending, some relationships will adjust, others will protest, a few may end. This is painful, but it is also clarifying, because a relationship that only works when you abandon yourself is not peace. It is a contract of invisibility. The grief of losing such a relationship can be real. Do not minimize it. Even unhealthy connections can carry love, memory, comfort, identity. You may miss people who could not meet you fully. You may grieve versions of them that existed sometimes, or almost existed, or existed only in your hope. But missing someone does not always mean you should return. Sometimes you miss the role because it was familiar. Sometimes you miss being needed because it gave you worth. Sometimes you miss the intensity because calm feels empty at first. Sometimes you miss the old pain because at least you knew who to be inside it. Freedom can feel lonely before it feels peaceful. When you stop performing, you may enter a strange middle place. You are no longer willing to be the old version, but you do not yet know how to live as the real one. This in-between stage can feel like emptiness. It can feel like identity loss. It can feel like you are becoming no one. But you are not becoming no one. You are becoming unassigned. For the first time, maybe in a long time, you are not simply obeying the scripts handed to you. You are not automatically being the pleasing one, the strong one, the impressive one, the quiet one, the rescuing one. There is space now. And space can feel terrifying if you are used to being defined by pressure. Let the space exist. Do not rush to fill it with a new performance. Do not try to become a perfectly authentic person overnight. Do not turn your healing into another identity that needs applause. Just begin listening. Ask, what do I actually enjoy when I am not trying to be impressive? What kind of people help me breathe easier?
What topics make me feel awake? What environments make me shrink? What have I been tolerating because it matches an old belief about what I deserve? What would my life look like if peace mattered as much as approval? These are not quick questions. They are living questions. You carry them, you return to them, you let your choices answer them slowly. There is another reason people pretend. They're afraid their real self will not be enough. This fear is often hidden beneath perfectionism. Perfectionism is not merely wanting to do well. It is the belief that your acceptability depends on flawlessness. It says, if I make a mistake, they will see the truth about me. It says, if I am not useful, attractive, successful, calm, intelligent, interesting, or strong, I may be rejected. Perfectionism is shame with a work ethic. It creates a life where you are always improving, but rarely arriving. Every achievement becomes temporary relief. Every compliment becomes pressure to maintain the image. Every mistake becomes evidence in an imaginary trial against your worth. This is exhausting. Some people do not rest because there is always more to fix. Their body lies down, but the inner critic keeps working. It reviews conversations, it judges choices, it compares timelines, it predicts failure. It says, you should be further by now. You wasted time. You're falling behind. Everyone else has figured it out. That voice may sound like truth because it has been around for so long, but familiarity is not the same as wisdom. The inner critic often began as an attempt to protect you from criticism outside. If you could criticize yourself first, maybe other people's judgment would hurt less. If you could stay ahead of every flaw, maybe rejection could be prevented. If you could become perfect, maybe you would finally feel safe. But perfection never creates safety. It creates surveillance. You become both the prisoner and the guard. A healthier inner voice does not remove responsibility. It does not say, do whatever you want, nothing matters. It says, you can grow without hating yourself. It says, a mistake is information, not a verdict. It says, you are allowed to be unfinished. It says, your worth is not waiting at the end of your productivity. If you have lived with a harsh inner voice for years, gentleness may feel suspicious. You may fear that if you stop being hard on yourself, you will fall apart. But ask honestly, has cruelty made you whole? Or has it simply kept you moving while wounded? There is a difference between movement and healing. You can move fast while being deeply split. You can achieve while being disconnected. You can look successful while being privately ashamed. The world often rewards movement more than integration, so people keep moving. But the body has its own truth. It may begin with headaches, insomnia, tightness, fatigue, loss of appetite, emotional numbness, irritability, difficulty focusing, a sense that everything takes too much effort. These are not always random inconveniences. Sometimes they are the cost of a life where the mind keeps saying yes and the body keeps saying no. The body is not your enemy. It is often the most honest part of you. It does not care about your image. It does not care how impressive your explanation sounds. It responds to reality. If a situation drains you, the body knows. If a relationship makes you feel unsafe, the body knows. If a dream is no longer yours, the body knows. If you are grieving, the body knows. Even when you insist you are fine. Learning to listen to the body can feel strange in a culture that teaches us to override it. We push through hunger, Push through exhaustion, push through sadness, push through anxiety, push through discomfort, push through until pushing becomes identity. Then we are surprised when peace feels unfamiliar. Try a different question. Instead of asking, "What can I force myself to do?" ask, "What is my body asking me to notice?" Instead of asking, "How do I stop feeling this?" ask, "What does this feeling need from me?" Instead of asking, "How do I become normal again?" ask, "What part of my normal was actually hurting me?" These questions do not make life easy, but they make it more honest. And honest suffering is different from confused suffering. When you suffer without understanding, you often blame yourself. When you begin to understand, the pain may still be there, but it becomes meaningful. You can see the pattern. You can see the wound. You can see the old strategy. You can see the choice point. That is where change begins. Not in a sudden transformation, not in a perfect morning routine, not in becoming someone else. Change begins in the small pause between the old performance and a new response. Someone asks for more than you can give, and you pause. A familiar guilt rises, but you do not obey it immediately. Someone misunderstands you, and you pause. A need to over-explain appears, but you let one clear sentence be enough. You feel the urge to disappear, and you pause. You ask whether silence is wisdom or fear. The pause is powerful. It creates room for choice. Without the pause, the past chooses for you. Old fear speaks through your mouth. Old shame chooses your relationships. Old survival decides your schedule. Old wounds call themselves personality. With the pause, you begin to return. At first, the pause may be uncomfortable because it interrupts your automatic safety strategies. But over time, it becomes a doorway. You learn that not every uncomfortable feeling is danger. Sometimes discomfort is simply the sensation of growing beyond an old identity. A boundary may feel like guilt at first. Honesty may feel like danger. Rest may feel like laziness. Receiving may feel undeserved. Being seen may feel exposed. This does not mean you should run back to the mask. It means your system is recalibrating. Give it time. The parts of you that learned to hide need repeated evidence that honesty can be survived. You do not build this evidence through fantasy. You build it through experience. You tell a safe person a little more truth and watch what happens. You say no and realize the world does not end. You rest and see that you are still worthy. You make a mistake and learn that shame does not have to swallow you whole. You let someone see you sad and discover that maybe you do not have to be alone with everything. This is how the nervous system learns, not from motivational quotes, but from lived proof. There is a particular kind of loneliness that comes from being loved for your role. People may enjoy your humor, your help, your calmness, your achievements, your availability. They may genuinely care for you, but they may not know the private cost of the version they enjoy. This creates a painful question. Would they still love me if I stopped performing? The answer will not be the same for everyone. Some people will surprise you with tenderness. They were not asking you to perform. They simply did not know you were hiding. When you become more honest, they may come closer. They may say, "I wish I had known." They may adjust. They may meet you with care. Other people may resist. They may prefer the old arrangement. They may call your needs inconvenient. They may interpret your boundaries as rejection. They may accuse you of changing as if change is betrayal. And yes, you are changing. But maybe you are changing into someone who can finally breathe. Not everyone who loses access to the old you is being punished.
Some are simply experiencing the natural consequence of your self-respect. Some had a relationship with your compliance, not your personhood. Some loved the service you provided more than the human being providing it. This realization can hurt.
Let it hurt without letting it define your future. Because there are people who can love you more honestly. But to find them, you have to stop auditioning for those who only approve of your mask. This does not mean you should expose your deepest self to everyone. Discernment matters. Not every room is safe. Not every person deserves access. Authenticity is not emotional nudity in public. It is alignment. It is knowing who you are, even when you choose privacy. It is no longer lying to yourself in order to be chosen. Privacy says, "This part of me is sacred." Pretending says, "This part of me is unacceptable." There is a difference. You can be private and authentic. You can be quiet and authentic. You can be professional and authentic. You do not need to tell everyone everything. The goal is not exposure. The goal is integrity. Integrity means the person you are when alone is not in constant conflict with the person you present to the world. For some people, the first step toward integrity is admitting what they do not want. This can be easier than knowing what you do want. If you've spent years pleasing, your own desires may feel blurry, but your discomfort may be clearer. You may not know your dream life yet, but you know which conversations leave you feeling small. You know which obligations fill you with dread. You know which relationships require you to shrink. You know which goals feel impressive but lifeless. Start there. Discomfort is not always a command to leave, but it is always information. Maybe you do not need to quit everything. Maybe you need one honest conversation. Maybe you need to stop saying yes automatically. Maybe you need more solitude. Maybe you need therapy. Maybe you need creativity. Maybe you need to grieve. Maybe you need to rebuild your life slowly around who you actually are, not who you became to avoid rejection. Do not underestimate slow rebuilding. A life can change quietly, one boundary at a time, one truthful sentence at a time, one unperformed moment at a time, one decision that respects your nervous system, one friendship where you can be less polished, one evening where you do not escape yourself, one morning where you do not begin by attacking who you are. These small choices may not look dramatic, but they accumulate. Eventually, you begin to feel something you may not have felt in years. Inner space. Not constant happiness, not permanent confidence. Space. A little room between you and the roles. A little room between feeling and reacting. A little room between someone's expectation and your answer. A little room between the old fear and the present moment. That room is freedom beginning. Many people think freedom means doing whatever they want. But psychological freedom is deeper. It means you can choose from your present values rather than your old wounds. It means the past may influence you, but it no longer fully drives you. It means you can feel fear without making fear your leader. This kind of freedom is quiet, but it changes everything. You stop needing every person to validate your choices. You stop confusing discomfort with danger. You stop making your life a courtroom where you are always defending your existence. You stop asking, what version of me will make them stay? And begin asking, what kind of life allows me to stay with myself? That question is sacred. What kind of life allows you to stay with yourself? Not just survive, not just succeed.
not just be admired. Stay with yourself. Wake up and feel that you are not betraying the person inside. Go through a day without constantly abandoning your body, your limits, your truth. Lie down at night without feeling like you spent the whole day acting in a play you never auditioned for. Maybe that life is not far away in every way. Maybe pieces of it already exist. A certain friend, a certain hour of the day, a certain kind of music, a walk,
A notebook, a place where you breathe differently,
a memory of who you were before the world taught you to edit yourself. Follow those pieces. They are clues. The real self often returns through quiet preferences before big decisions. You notice what colors calm you, what conversations energize you, what work feels meaningful, what pace feels humane, what people do not make you perform, what forms of beauty reach you, what kind of silence heals rather than hurts. Do not mock these small things. They are not trivial. They are the language of a self that may have been ignored for years. When someone has been starving, even a small meal matters. When the inner life has been starved, even small acts of truth can feel nourishing. There's also the matter of forgiveness. Not forgiving others, at least not first. Forgiving yourself. Forgiving yourself for the years you spent pretending. For the relationships where you stayed too long. For the times you said yes while your whole body said no. For the dreams you postponed because approval felt safer. For the ways you ignored your own pain. For the version of you that thought survival was the same as peace. Self-forgiveness is difficult because hindsight can be cruel. Once you see the pattern, you may judge your past self for not seeing it sooner. But your past self did not have your current awareness. They had fear, conditioning, limited support, old wounds, and the tools available at the time. They got you here, maybe imperfectly, maybe painfully, but they got you here. Do not turn awakening into another reason to hate who you were. The goal is not to look back and say, I was so stupid. The goal is to say, I understand why I did what I did, and now I am learning another way. That sentence carries both compassion and responsibility. Compassion without responsibility can become avoidance. Responsibility without compassion becomes punishment. You need both. You need compassion for the frightened parts that learn to hide. You need responsibility for the adult choices that can now create a different future. You need tenderness and structure, patience and honesty, grief and movement. Healing is not one mood, it is many. Some days you will feel clear. Other days you will slip back into old roles. This is normal. Do not make relapse into identity. A pattern built over decades will not disappear because you had one powerful realization at midnight. You will forget. You will perform. You will say yes too quickly. You will over-explain. You will laugh when you are hurt. Then you will notice. And noticing is progress. Every time you notice, you loosen the pattern. Awareness is not failure. Awareness is the beginning of choice. The false self wants perfection because it is built on fear. The real self can grow through mistakes because it is rooted in relationship with reality. Reality includes messiness, confusion, slow progress, conversations that do not go perfectly, boundaries that shake, feelings that return. You do not need to become a perfectly authentic person. You need to become a person who returns to truth more often. Return is the practice. Return after pleasing. Return after hiding. Return after pretending. Return after losing yourself in someone else's expectations. Return after comparing. Return after fear. Return after shame. The path is not a straight line out of the mask. It is a spiral back to yourself. Each time you return, you may find a little more courage, a little more clarity, a little less willingness to disappear, a little more respect for the quiet voice inside that kept whispering, "This is not enough. This is not honest. There is more life available than this." That voice was not trying to ruin your life. It was trying to save it, not by destroying everything, but by bringing you back into contact with what is real. At some point, you may have to redefine what a good life means. For many people, a good life used to mean being chosen, being praised, being safe from criticism, being financially secure, being in control, being impressive, being needed. These things are not meaningless, but they are incomplete. A good life must also include inner permission. Permission to feel, permission to change, permission to disappoint people sometimes, permission to need rest, permission to want what you want, permission to stop performing gratitude for things that are hurting you, permission to be a real human being, not a permanently pleasant character in everyone else's story. This permission may not be given to you by the people around you. You may have to give it to yourself. That can feel unfair. Maybe someone should have given it earlier. Maybe a parent should have made room for your feelings. Maybe a partner should have listened. Maybe a friend should have noticed. Maybe a culture built around productivity and appearance should not have taught you to turn your soul into a resume. Yes, maybe. But now the question is not only who failed you, the question is who will care for the parts that remain. You can. Not perfectly, not all at once, but you can become the person who no longer leaves yourself behind. You can begin by telling the truth in places where truth is safe enough. You can begin by resting before your body forces collapse. You can begin by noticing when your smile is a shield. You can begin by asking whether your kindness includes you. You can begin by treating your exhaustion as information, not a moral defect. You can begin tonight, not with a dramatic decision, not with a promise to become someone new by morning, simply by being honest for one quiet moment. Maybe the honest sentence is, "I am tired of pretending." Maybe it is, "I don't know who I am without the role." Maybe it is, "I am scared people will leave if I change." Maybe it is, "I want to feel alive again." Maybe it is, "I have been lonely for a long time." Let the sentence exist. Do not rush to fix it. Do not decorate it. Do not turn it into content for someone else. Let it be yours. There is dignity in admitting the truth quietly. There is dignity in being unfinished. There is dignity in realizing that the version of you who survived is not the same version who must carry you forward. Maybe you are not tired of life. Maybe you are tired of a life where you cannot be fully present. Maybe you are tired of conversations where you disappear, tired of goals that do not belong to you, tired of relationships where your peace depends on your silence, tired of pretending you are fine because explaining the truth feels too complicated. That tiredness is not the end of you. It may be the beginning of your honesty. And honesty at first can feel like loss. You may lose illusions. You may lose old roles. You may lose the comfort of being predictable. You may lose the approval of people who preferred you smaller.
But you may gain something quieter and more valuable. You may gain yourself. Not as a perfect person, not as a fearless person, but as a real person. A person who can say, "This is what I feel." A person who can say, "This is what I need." A person who can say, "This is not mine to carry." A person who can say, "I am allowed to change." A person who no longer mistakes being liked for being loved, or being useful for being worthy. That person may feel unfamiliar at first. Welcome them anyway. They have been waiting a long time. And maybe as you listen more closely, you will discover that life itself was not the problem. The problem was trying to live it as someone you were never meant to be. There's still time to come back. There is still time to stop performing pain as strength. There is still time to build relationships where you do not have to earn your place by disappearing. There is still time to choose work, love, rest, and silence in ways that do not require self-betrayal. There is still time to become less impressive and more alive. Maybe the next chapter of your life does not begin with a loud transformation. Maybe it begins with one honest breath. One moment where you stop trying to look okay and simply tell yourself the truth. I am here. I am tired. I have been pretending. And I want to come home to myself. That is enough for tonight. Tomorrow you can take one small step from there. There is a reason so many people feel most honest when the day is over. During the day, life keeps asking for roles. Employee, student, partner, parent, friend, responsible adult, helpful person, calm person, productive person. The world does not usually pause and ask whether the role fits. It simply hands you the next task and expects you to become the version of yourself that can complete it. Night is different. At night, the audience thins out. The demands become quieter. The room stops asking you to be useful, and in that stillness, the parts of you that were postponed all day begin to return. This is why bedtime can be difficult for people who are emotionally exhausted. It is not only because they cannot sleep, it is because, for the first time all day, they can hear themselves. The mind may start replaying conversations, not because it loves overthinking, but because it is searching for where you abandoned yourself. It returns to the moment you agreed when you wanted to refuse. The moment you stayed quiet when something hurt. The moment you acted unbothered. The moment you made yourself smaller to keep the room smooth. Overthinking is not always meaningless noise. Sometimes it is the psyche trying to repair a truth that was interrupted. Of course, rumination can become painful and repetitive. It can trap you in loops. But underneath many loops is an unmet need. The need to be honest, the need to be understood, the need to protect yourself better next time. Instead of only asking, "How do I stop thinking?" you might ask, "What is this thought trying to finish?" Maybe it is trying to finish a sentence you never said. Maybe it is trying to give anger a voice. Maybe it is trying to show you a pattern. When a person has spent years dismissing their own reactions, the mind may become loud because the inner world has not felt heard. It repeats what has not been integrated. It revisits what has not been honored.
It circles what still carries emotional charge. This does not mean every thought is true. It means every persistent thought may be asking for a wiser kind of attention. A thought may say, "They don't care about me." The deeper truth may be, "I need more reassurance than I admit." A thought may say, "I hate my life." The deeper truth may be, "I cannot keep living in this level of disconnection." A thought may say, "I'm falling behind." The deeper truth may be, "I'm terrified that if I stop performing, I won't be worth anything." The mind often speaks in extremes when the heart has been ignored. A skilled psychologist learns to listen beneath the first sentence. The first sentence is often defense. The deeper sentence is need. When you learn to listen this way to yourself, you stop treating your inner life like an enemy. You stop assuming that every uncomfortable feeling is proof that something is wrong with you. You begin to see symptoms as messages. Anxiety may be a message that you have been living too far ahead of yourself. Depression may be a message that parts of you have gone underground. Irritability may be a message that your limits are being crossed. Numbness may be a message that feeling became too much without support. Envy may be a message that you have disowned a desire. Boredom may be a message that your life has lost contact with meaning. These are not diagnoses, they are invitations to curiosity. And curiosity is one of the most healing attitudes a person can bring to their own mind. Most people do not need more self-attack. They have lived with enough of that. They need a more intelligent tenderness. Not sentimentality, not pretending everything is fine. A tenderness that can look directly at painful truths and still refuse to turn against the person experiencing them. Imagine speaking to yourself the way an experienced therapist might speak after hearing your full story. Not the edited version, not the version you make acceptable, the full one. The years of trying, the fear of disappointing people, the loneliness in crowded rooms, the exhaustion you could not explain, the pressure to be strong, the ache of wanting to be seen without knowing how to let yourself be seen. Would that therapist call you lazy? Would they call you dramatic? Would they tell you to just be grateful and stop thinking so much? Or would they say, "No wonder you were tired. Look how long you have been carrying a life that does not leave enough room for you"? Sometimes healing begins when you finally offer yourself the interpretation you deserved. Not, "I am broken," but "I adapted." Not, "I am weak," but "I have been overloaded." Not, "I ruin everything," but "I learned patterns that once protected me, and now I am learning new ones." The words you use matter because the mind builds identity from repetition. If you call yourself broken every day, you will experience every struggle as evidence of defect. If you call yourself lazy every time your body refuses another demand, you will miss the possibility that you are depleted. If you call yourself too sensitive every time something hurts, you will abandon the part of you that is trying to tell the truth. Try replacing accusation with description. Instead of "I'm useless," try "I'm having a hard time beginning." Instead of "I'm too needy," try "I have a need I am afraid to express." Instead of "I am a failure," try "Something important did not work and I am grieving that." Instead of "I can't handle life," try "The way I have been handling life is no longer sustainable." These sentences do not erase difficulty. They make difficulty workable. Shame freezes, clarity moves.
When people hear the phrase, "be yourself," they often imagine a confident person finally speaking loudly, dressing differently, leaving everything behind. But for many people, being yourself is much quieter. It may mean letting your face rest. It may mean admitting you do not enjoy something you have pretended to enjoy for years. It may mean telling someone you need time. It may mean no longer performing certainty when you are confused. Authenticity is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is almost invisible. It is choosing clothes that feel like you instead of clothes that create the least judgment. It is ordering what you actually want. It is saying, "I don't agree," without turning it into a fight. It is letting yourself be bad at something new. It is reading what interests you rather than what makes you look interesting. It is allowing your home to reflect your inner life instead of an imagined audience. A person who has lived for approval may need to reclaim ordinary preferences, because approval can invade everything. What you wear, what you post, what career sounds respectable, what opinions feel safe, what emotions are allowed, what dreams seem realistic, what kind of person you are supposed to love, what kind of pace you are supposed to keep, what kind of pain you are supposed to hide. The recovery of self often begins with small disobediences, not destructive rebellion, honest disobedience. The refusal to betray yourself when betrayal is not necessary. The refusal to turn your entire life into an apology. The refusal to keep auditioning for a love that requires your disappearance. Some people will call this selfish because they have mistaken access for closeness. But real closeness cannot be built on self-erasure. If I must disappear for you to feel close to me, then you are not close to me. You are close to the absence of my resistance. You are close to the ease of my compliance. You are close to a version of me that protects you from the complexity of who I am. True intimacy requires two selves in the room, not one self and one performance, not one person speaking and the other managing the atmosphere, not one person needing and the other endlessly absorbing. Two selves, two inner worlds, two sets of limits, two histories, two nervous systems learning how to be honest without destroying connection. This kind of intimacy is rare because it requires courage from both sides. It requires the courage to speak and the humility to listen. The courage to be impacted and the maturity not to collapse. The courage to say, "that hurt," and the courage to hear, "I did not mean to, but I see that it did." It requires repair. Many relationships do not fail because people have conflict. They fail because there is no safe way to repair. So people pretend, they avoid, they move on too quickly, they joke, they become cold, they become busy. They store small injuries until love turns into resentment. Repair is one of the deepest antidotes to pretending. When repair is possible, honesty becomes less dangerous. You learn that a relationship can survive discomfort. You learn that truth does not always lead to abandonment. You learn that being hurt does not mean you must either attack or disappear. You learn that connection can bend without breaking. But if you have never experienced safe repair, you may not believe it is possible. You may think every conflict is the beginning of an ending. You may avoid hard conversations until the relationship is already emotionally dead. You may accept shallow peace because deep honesty feels too risky. This is understandable, but it is not the only way. Healthy relationships are not places where no one is ever disappointed. They are places where disappointment can be spoken without humiliation. They are places where boundaries can be respected without punishment. They are places where your truth does not have to be perfect in order to be heard. If you do not have many relationships like that, do not conclude that you are unlovable. Conclude that you may need new experiences of safety. Safety is not only the absence of obvious harm. It is the presence of room. Room to feel, room to change, room to say no, room to be quiet, room to be imperfect.
Room to have a bad day without losing your place in someone's heart. When you have lived without that kind of room, your nervous system can mistake constant tension for normal life. Peace may feel boring at first. Healthy love may feel unfamiliar. Respect may feel less intense than chaos. A calm friendship may not trigger the same urgency as someone unpredictable. This is why healing can require learning to tolerate calm, not chase it, tolerate it. Because if your body is used to earning love through anxiety, peace may initially feel like emptiness. You may crave the familiar rush of proving yourself. You may feel drawn to people who recreate old wounds because they make you feel like you know the script. You may confuse chemistry with activation. A relationship can feel powerful because it awakens longing, but that does not mean it is safe. A situation can feel meaningful because it matches an old wound, but that does not mean it is love.
Sometimes intensity is the nervous system recognizing a familiar danger and calling it destiny. Slow love may feel strange. Steady people may not give you the emotional spikes you are used to. They may not make you chase. They may not require performance. They may not reward your self-abandonment. At first, you may not know who to be around them. This is a good sign. It means the old role is not being demanded. Give yourself time to learn a connection that does not require losing yourself. The same is true for work, ambition, and purpose. If you have built your worth around pressure, meaningful work may feel suspiciously calm. You may think, if I am not suffering, am I doing enough? You may associate value with strain. But not everything real has to destroy you. Not every meaningful path has to be fueled by panic. There is a form of productivity that comes from alignment rather than fear. It has discipline, but not hatred. Effort, but not self-erasure. Standards, but not cruelty. It allows rest because rest supports the work, not because rest has been earned through collapse. It allows mistakes because learning is part of creation, not proof of inadequacy. If you are used to performing, you may need to rebuild your relationship with effort. Effort does not have to mean proving your worth. It can mean expressing your values. It can mean caring for something that matters. It can mean developing a gift. It can mean serving a purpose without sacrificing your humanity. A life without pretending is not a life without effort. It is a life where effort is no longer a costume for worthlessness. You may still work hard. You may still care deeply. You may still show up for people. You may still pursue goals. But the inner posture changes. You are not begging existence to justify you. You are participating in life from a place that includes you. This is subtle, but profound. A person performing strength says, I can handle everything. A person living with self-respect says, I can handle many things, and I also have limits. A person performing kindness says, your needs matter more than mine. A person living with compassion says, your needs matter, and mine do too. A person performing success says, I must keep achieving so I do not feel empty. A person living with purpose says, I want to build something meaningful, and I will not abandon my soul to do it. The words may look similar from the outside. The inner world is completely different.
That inner world is where your life is actually lived.